Hello, welcome to another Math Homework Help by your teacher Anne. Hello, today our lesson was about ratios, rates, unit rates, and proportions. Now, if we're not able to finish it in class, I'm going to go ahead and finish it here in the video. Okay, so you can always rewind this video, take down notes as well. So ratios are defined as a multiplicative comparison of two quantities, or simply comparison of two numbers. And as an important reminder, ratios needed to be in the proper order. For example, they want it large to small, so you shouldn't change the order that they want it. You have to follow that it should be the large first and then the small. If you switch them around, it's going to be wrong. So let's look at the example here. Mrs. K has 2 large dogs and 8 small dogs. The first question is, what is the ratio of large to small dogs? Remember that ratios can be written as a fraction, or with the 2 dots, or with the word 2. Okay? So which number should we write down first on top of a fraction? They want it large to small. And what is the number of large? 2. So it should be the number on top of your fraction. And you have to label it. It is the large, it's the number for large dogs. So write down L. While the small dogs is 8 dogs. So it should go down here. And they are the small dogs. So if you switch these two numbers around, then it's going to be wrong. It's going to be small to large. It should be large to small. Okay, you have to follow what the question is asking for. So as a fraction, 2 to 8, can we simplify this? Yes, we can. So you may go ahead and use the greatest common factor of 2 and 8 will be 2. Therefore, your answer will be 1 to 4. So for every 1 large dog, there is 4 small dogs. And is that still equal to your 2 to 8? Yes. So let's say this is your 8 small dogs and this is the 2 large dogs. Then let's group them. For every 1 large dog, this is it, there will be 4 small dogs. Isn't it? This is your 1 to 4, 1 large, and then there are 4 small dogs. And also the other one is for 1 large dog, there will be 4 small dogs. And altogether, that is still 2 large dogs and 8 small dogs. Okay? So your 1 to 4 is still equivalent to your 2 to 8. So here, as we use the word 2, we can write down the simplest form, which is 1 to 4. Or as we use the 2 dots, we can use 1 to 4. And that's still the same thing as 2 to 8. Okay, this is just the simpler form or simplest form. So we're done with the first question. Let's look at the next one. What is the ratio of large dogs to the total number of dogs? So now we're going to compare part of all the dogs to the total number of dogs that we have. So that's going to be large to the total number of dogs. So that means you're comparing part to whole. Okay? Earlier, we were comparing part to part because we were comparing the large dogs to the small dogs. That's part to part. Now, we're comparing part of the dogs, which are large dogs, the number of large dogs, compared with the whole number or the total number of dogs that we have. So as a fraction, the large should be the number on top, which is going to be 2. The total of these two will be 10 dogs. So we write 10 at the bottom. Okay, so this is our fraction. Now, can we simplify it? Yes, we can. You divide both by the greatest common factor of 2 and 10, which is 2. Then what will be your answer? 2 divided by 2 is 1. Then 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this is still the number of large to the total number. So this fraction here is just, a simpler form, which is still equivalent to 2 to 10. So what does this mean? For every 5 dogs, there will be 1 large dog. And so I group them again. This is your 5 dogs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out of the 5, there will be 1 large. 1 large. This is it. And there will be 5 dogs. And one of them is large. Okay? And isn't it that is still the total of your 2 large? And then we still have 8 small dogs here. Okay? So we're just trying to group them and compare them part to part, and this time part to the whole thing, okay? Which is a total of 10 dogs. So we're trying to compare the large to the total number of dogs. And the simpler form will be for every 5 total dogs, there will be for sure 1 large dog. Okay? And the picture is showing that to us. So as a fraction, it's 1 to 5 in simplest form. Okay? Now, what about the word 2? You can go ahead and use the simplest form as well, 1 to 5. With the 2 dots, it's 1, the 2 dots, and then the 5. You can read it also the way we read the word 2. So this one is read as 1 to 5. Do not switch them around. Remember, it's going to be wrong if you switch them around. They want it large to the total, so it's going to stay that way. Now let's move on to the next example. Now the next example is small to large. They want the ratio of small to large. So write down S to L. So that's like part to part, right? It's not the total we're comparing with. It's part small and part large. So let's go ahead and write it as a fraction with the word 2 and the 2 dots. So we know the small dogs are 8. So why do we have to write them first? Because it came before the word 2. So the small dogs, which are 8, should be on top of our fraction and label it with S. Then the next one will be, after the word 2 is your large dogs. And the number of large dogs are 2. So you write down 2 at the bottom as your second number. Then write down L. Now, can we simplify 8 to 2? Yes, we can. Use your greatest common factor. For 8 and 2 will be 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So 4 is still the number of small dogs, and the 1 is the number of large dog. Okay? So we're comparing small to large. This is like exactly what we had earlier, but it's just the other way around. We're comparing large to small here. Now we're comparing small to large. So as a fraction of small to large, we can write down 4 to 1. Okay? As a fraction in simplest form. Now, using the word 2, you have to write down the 4 first before the word 2 and then the 1 after the word 2. With the 2 dots, you have to write down the 4, which is the number of small dogs, to the number of large dogs in that order. Okay? Okay, now the next ratio that is being asked is small to the total. So we're going to compare part to whole. So that's going to be small to the total number of dogs. So what will be your first number on top of your fraction will be the small because it came before the word 2. And then the second number will be your total because it came after the word 2. Okay, so the number for small is 8 dogs. So that's going to be our first number, which is 8 on top of our fraction. Then the next number will be the word after 2, which is the total number of all the dogs. That's going to be the 10 dogs. So we're comparing part, which is the small dogs, to the total number of dogs we have. So 8 to 10. Okay, now we can simplify 8 to 10. You know that. They're both even numbers, so you can divide them by their greatest common factor, which is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Isn't it when we group them in 5 dogs, there were 4 small dogs and there were one large dog. Okay? In 5 total dogs, there's always 4 small dogs when we try to group them. Remember the drawing earlier? The next question is, so what percentage are the large dogs? So if we want a percentage of something, isn't it that we have to write down first a fraction so we can change it to a decimal and then to a percent? So they want the percentage of large dogs. You know the number of large dogs is 2. So we have to write it as a numerator on our fraction. And as a percent, we need the bottom number to be the total number. And the total number of our dogs is a total of 10. So it should be 10 here. And you know 2/10 is written as a decimal, wherein the 2 should be on the tens place. So it's still read as 2/10. Now change it to a percent. Move the decimal point twice to the right. Thus, the percentage of our large dog is 20%. Okay? So let's go ahead and make sense out of this. We know we only have 2 large dogs, and that makes sense to me that they are only 20%, okay, out of the 10 dogs that we have. Now, you go ahead and try to think of what is that percentage for that 8 small dogs. Now that we know that the 2 large dogs out of the 10 is 20, if I add that to this missing number, percent number for 8 small dogs, it will always equal to 100%, like your score or your grade. So can you think of that percentage for the small dog? So the percentage for the small dogs is 80%, while the percentage for large dogs are 20%. Isn't it if we add these two, will always be equal to 100%, okay? Now let's move on to rates and unit rates. What are unit rates? Unit rates are like your fraction, but the denominator is 1. Okay? So if it's not a denominator of 1, then you just call it a rate. But if it's a denominator of 1, you can call it as a unit rate. The example says, Donna typed in a 15-character text message in 5 seconds. So we can write it as a fraction. So a rate can be written as a fraction. So the number of characters is 15 over in how many seconds? It's going to be 5 seconds. So this is what we call a rate for Donna's typing. So 15 characters is what she's able to type in 5 seconds. That's kind of fast. Now, can we write down Donna's rate in typing as a unit rate per second? So that means we have to change that 5 seconds into 1 second. Okay? So you can go ahead and write it down again. 15 over 5. Then let's go ahead and simplify. Isn't it a unit rate has a denominator of 1? So we want that 5 to become 1. So what number do we divide 5 to become 1? Any number divided by itself will equal to 1. So we use 5 as our factor here to divide both numbers with. So on top, you have to do the same thing. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So what does this mean? 3 characters is what she's able to type in 1 second. And this, having a 1 at the bottom, is what we call a unit rate. So the next situation is, how many characters will Donna be able to type in 10 seconds? What about in 15 seconds or 20 seconds? So what are we going to do in order to find out how many characters will she be able to type in those seconds? Since I already know how many characters she's able to type in 1 second, therefore that's what I'm going to use here. And I know the bottom number is your number of seconds. Okay? Therefore, I'm going to go ahead, change that 1 second into 10 seconds. Now, I'm going to go ahead, think of a number that I can multiply by 1, so it will equal to 810. So that should be 10. Isn't it? Any number multiplied by 1 will equal to itself. So what you did at the bottom, you have to do on the top. 3 times 10 will be 30. So in 10 seconds, Donna can type 30 characters. Now, can you do or find the number of characters she can type in 15 seconds? So this time, we're going to change that 1 to become 15 seconds down here. So what number should I multiply by 1 to equal to a 15? Of course, that's going to be 15 because we said any number multiplied by 1 will equal to itself. So what you did at the bottom, which is multiply by 15, you have to do the same thing on the top. And what is 3 times 15 will be 45. Therefore, in 15 seconds, Donna is able to type 45 characters. Okay? What about in 20 seconds? Should we do the same thing? Now let's move on to proportions. A proportion is just a pair of two equivalent ratios, okay? And then we can have a table full of ratios that are equivalent to each other as well, okay? Just like the table that you see on the right side. Remember how much Donna can type in 1 second? It was 3 characters. So let's go ahead and fill this out. What about 2 seconds? That's going to be double this. So that's going to be 6 characters in 2 seconds. What about in 3 seconds? So it's just scaling up with 3. So that's going to be plus 3 here. That's going to be 9 characters in 3 seconds. What about in 4 seconds? So another 3 added to this. That's going to be 12 characters in 4 seconds. And so on, right? And on this table, we just scaled with 3 to 1. And that's what we mean by scaling. So when we say scaling, when we multiply or divide the same number, just like when we try to simplify a number, we're trying to scale down. Like the 4 over 8 here, we divide by 4, we're going to have 1/2. So we scale down by dividing. We can also scale up like what we did here. Okay? So when we're scaling up, we're multiplying the number or the numbers by the same factor. Now let's go ahead and look at the next example, and we're going to go ahead and use a proportion to solve it. Okay? So Donna typed in a 15-character text message in 5 seconds. In the same rate, how many characters will Donna be able to type in 60 seconds, which is also equivalent to 1 minute? Now, when you're setting up a proportion, you have to remember the rule is you have to write down the number of characters across the number of characters and the number of seconds across the number of seconds. So our first ratio here will be the 15 characters in 5 seconds. So 15 characters over 5 seconds. Now the other number given here is on the question. How many characters will Donna be able to type in 60 seconds? So where should I place the 60 seconds? On our proportion, it should be across the number of seconds. Therefore, it should be down here across that 5. So 60 seconds should be down here. Then we'll be able to find out how many characters will that be that she can type in 60 seconds. In solving a proportion, the first step is you cross multiply. Step 2 is whatever you got from step 1, you have to divide it by the other number we haven't used, which is the 5 seconds. Now this is not yet done because you have an extra 0 to bring down. And if you brought down a number, you have to have an answer on the top. And it's going to be 0 in this case. Therefore, going back to our proportion, how many characters can Donna type in 60 seconds? So that's going to be this number of characters, 180 characters in 60 seconds or 1 minute. Filling out the table can also lead to having this answer, but that's going to be a long way. So you see, the use of a proportion will help you find or predict the number that is missing, especially if it's asking for a bigger number. Okay? Using a table is okay, but it's gonna take you forever to get to the 60 seconds as you increase here by 1 second and then increase here by 3 characters. Then that's gonna be a really long table that you're gonna have there. So what you do is just use a proportion. So the steps are here. Step 1, remember, it's cross multiplication of whichever numbers are there to cross multiply. And then whatever you got on step 1, you divide it by the other number that you haven't used from your proportion. And then you divide good, then you're going to be able to get the correct answer that is missing. Okay? Now you know what proportions are. Good luck on your homework, and I'll see you in class. Bye!